Hey guys, welcome back to Sad Dad. My name's Dave Abkary and I am a comedian out of Fresno, California, and this is a podcast where I sit down with my fellow funny friends, my fellow comedians, and we talk about dads. Hi, how are you? How's your week been? It's been kind of a crazy week of shows this week. It's so funny, like our Sunday show, we can't hardly get anybody to show up for our Sunday show. It's like a dying show. But then our Mondays and Tuesdays, I have, comedians fighting to get on the open mics. And it's like, well, if some of you guys went to Sundays too, that show would probably be way better and you guys would have more stage time. And we have just these crazy, like, growing pains in the scene right now. It's always a bummer, like, when you, I showed up for our Tuesday show. People get to, like, the venue we do our Tuesday show at before I do. Like, I put on the show. And I was writing up the open mic list, and I had some new stuff I wanted to work on, so I was going to do the open mic. I wasn't going to perform on the show. And so, like, I wrote up the list. I was like, okay, who was here first? And so let them sign up in the order that they got there first. And then I went to sign up on my own open mic, my own list. The list I wrote and made, and I couldn't get up any earlier than 7 at my own show. So it's cool and it's exciting because it wasn't like that even a year ago. There's so many young comics in the scene right now, and it's cool. They're all, like, really, really hungry for stage time, and we had a really fun show last night, Tuesday night. It was a blast. Monday was pretty fun too, and Sunday was kind of like whatever. So I don't know what we're gonna do with the Sunday shows, but it's cool. I'm working on some cool projects. It's like I have this one project I really want to tell you guys about, but I can't tell you about it because it's too early. But I'm so excited about it, you guys. Hopefully, I'm going to go into some meetings on later this week, so maybe I can tell you about it next week. Oh, next week is 4th of July. Holy shnikes, that just snuck right up on us, huh? It's crazy. I was walking into a grocery store the other day, and I saw one of, like, the fireworks booths, and I was like, oh yeah, it's almost 4th of July. And I remember, like, as a kid, because when you're a kid and it's like summertime and you're off from school, like, 4th of July was almost like this weird, like, looming monolith of a holiday. It's like you knew it was coming, and it was sort of like the centerpiece of your summer. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't exactly like a midway point, but it was close. And so you kind of, like, there was like 4th of July was sort of like peak summer, and, like, I felt like a lot of summer as a kid was just sort of like in the shadow of 4th of July. It's like, oh, what are we going to do for 4th of July? We're going to go camping, or, like, what, we're going to go to a pool party. Like, and it was always just this kind of, like, super cool holiday as a kid. And like I said, the centerpiece of your whole summer. And, like, now as an adult, I, like, almost forgot about it, but that's where it's kind of fun having a kid like Abby. That's where she's at right now as a kid. She's like, Dad, what are we doing for 4th of July? And I was like, I don't know. I got to find something cool to do for us. And that's next week. Next episode of Sad Dad is going to be I'm going to release it on 4th of July. I just looked at the calendar there. So yeah, but yeah. So, I mean, it's summer. It's hot. There's still a lot of lizards on my front porch. They're all just doing their lizardy thing. I don't know what happens. So, like, once a year I'll get, like, mice in my house. I think it gets hot and they, like, find a way into my house, and I had the same problem last year but I was, like, ready for it this year, and I got them all. Last year I waited too long, and then I had to catch a bunch of little mice babies, and that was sad, but I got them all. I got all the mice this year pretty early, and I always feel so bad about it. They're so cute. Just cute little mice. You're like, you're not supposed to be here. And now you're dead. Why did you have to do this? Why did you have to do this to both of us? I don't know. A lot of guilt. Anyway, I got a great guest for you today. We're back on track, by the way. We're back on track. I've got guests. I know last week, I kind of had to do a solo episode. It was kind of a crazy week last week. So thanks for bearing with me on that. A lot of downloads on that episode last week. I guess you guys just like hearing me rant, which is cool. I realize I'm the only, like, constant on this show, so I'm glad you guys like me. But this week's guest, Ben Brandfon, very, very funny comedian out of Los Angeles. We talk a lot about that. But hanging out with Ben the last few days, and he's such a nice guy. He's so sweet, and he's so thoughtful, and he's so soft spoken that like sometimes you don't even like he'll just sneak up on you. Like we went and got lunch yesterday, and he just out of nowhere just started riffing on toothpicks. He got a toothpick after we bought lunch and just killed me. Like he's so funny, and like it's so he just Trojan horses his way into like casual conversation with just the funniest bits. And it's like if you're on the outside listening to Ben talk about this stuff, you're like, oh, that guy's just talking about something. But when you're engaged in the conversation with him, he went on this bit about toothpicks, and then he started riffing on bananas. And it's just so funny. He's so clever with everything that he does. Even in because a lot of comedians sometimes we call it like being on. Like you stop being on. Like be a person. Stop trying to like make me laugh. Like I'm a comedian. I do that too. And Ben isn't one of those guys. He's not one of those comedians that's always on. Like he knows how to be a person, but sometimes he will turn it on and you won't notice, and then he'll just fucking blow you out of the water with something hilarious just in casual conversation while you're getting noodles at a noodle place. And so yeah, I've had so much fun with him the last few days having him up, and we sat down on Monday to record this Sad Dad, and it's really fun. I listened back to it today, and I really like it. His dadecdote at the end is maybe one of my new favorites. It's really, really good. And he's a great storyteller too. So he delivers it perfectly. So guys, without further ado, here we go. Let's jump into it. Ben Brandfon.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I think we're just gonna be sweating. Tim Grishel, he's a OC comic.
No,
I did one with him last summer, and the same situation. He and I are just two fat guys just sweating. He's like, "Can I stop talking about my dad now?"
Yeah, exactly. I know.
He's great. I love Tim. That's awesome. Cool. You can scoot that a little closer.
Okay. Sound good?
Yeah, you're sounding pretty good.
Testing.
Check 1 2.
I can hear myself.
You can hear yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great, man. You were saying. Sorry, just taking a sip of water. You were saying, you came up back during the Mother Mary's days. You came up to Fresno.
I did. I was here once with Olivia Grace.
Yeah. That's I don't know. What are your thoughts on Fresno? You got to like drive around today and get breakfast.
Oh yeah, I like Fresno. I was here before. It's interesting. I've been here in the summer and the winter now. Yeah, it's pretty hot right now. I feel like I checked the weather and it's like these 3 days I'm here are the hottest days of the year. Yeah.
It really like. I think I was telling you yesterday. It can like really affect the turnout to our show sometimes. Like, I would say like a couple Wednesdays ago was like our first 105 degree day, and everybody was like, "Fuck comedy."
I see it. Why would you want to go anywhere? Yeah, I know. And it stays light so long now.
Yeah.
It gets cooler though. It does get cooler.
Yeah, it's not too bad. At nighttime, it'll drop down to like the 70s or whatever. But I don't know. But then people kind of like you kind of get used to it, and you're like, okay, it's always gonna be hot. It's gonna be hot for the next 3 months. So
right. I think that first wave is the toughest. I would think if it's cold, I wouldn't want to go anywhere.
That's true too. Really, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in LA.
Okay. Oh wow, you're like a native.
Yeah. I wasn't born in LA, but we moved when I was 4. And so I went all through elementary school, middle school, high school.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I know so many people from LA, but know very few people that actually grew up in LA. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's that like? What
it's
part
pretty normal, actually. You don't know you're there when you're a kid.
Sure.
It's just your life.
Yeah. Right.
LA also is sort of designed to look like everywhere else because they film everything there.
Sure.
So you watch TV and you're like, hey, Illinois is just like where I am, but it's not because they're filming it here. I had a pretty nice childhood. I lived in Mid-City, kind of near the LA County Museum, and I went to high school at Hamilton High School, and occasionally I would walk across the quad, and like where I would hang out would be like a set. They would film on our high school.
Oh, funny.
And it would be annoying because we wouldn't be able to hang out there.
You just walk right into a scene from 90210. You're like, shit.
It was worse than that. It's like you'd walk into a scene from like the Puritan days, and you're like, all right, I guess we can't.
Because I'm Amish now, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember where we used to hang out, there was a soda machine right in the middle, and they just put like a big wooden box over it, and I was like, all right.
I'd like to get my Fanta,
no soda,
please.
Yeah,
no soda today.
No soda today. Yeah.
That's funny, man. Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I could see that would like kind of like warp your perception of what real life is. Where did you said you moved there when you were 4? Where from? Where you guys?
Well, I was born in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
But my parents and I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, when I was about 2 or 3. I only lived there for like a year.
Sure.
My dad was a professor, and he taught at the College of Charleston. Mm-hmm. But he also did teach at USC for like a year. So it was weird. The first few years of my life, we were like all over.
Right.
And then by the time I was like 4 or 5, I was in LA, and I never left. Yeah.
Were you a big family? I mean, do you have a lot of brothers and sisters?
Nope. I'm an only child.
Are you really?
Just me, yeah.
Yeah, just growing up in LA, living that LA life. Huh?
I know. I didn't. Yeah, you don't know the difference, but yeah, like it was. I had my own room and the whole thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Were you like a good student? I mean, were you like what kind of kid were you growing up?
I wasn't that good of a student actually, even though people at school thought I was a good student because I was kind of quiet.
Right.
But I wasn't really that good, especially in middle school. I was pretty bad actually.
Yeah.
I got better in high school.
When you say bad, were you like just not good at like taking tests, or were you kind of like a rambunctious kid? Or
I think in middle school, my friends would cut class a lot, and I'd do that, and I also was bad at tests.
Yeah.
And I didn't do very well at all. And I remember they would send notes home to my parents when I would like do badly in a class and stuff, and I'd figure it out, and I'd like intercept them. And throw them out,
Nice, yeah. That's some real Bart Simpson shit right there.
Exactly. I mean, because the first few I got really, in trouble. So I was like, I'm not letting this happen again. I'd get home before my parents, so I'd check the mail.
That's so funny. Yeah.
But, I couldn't intercept the report card.
Right.
That was the big one.
Right.
But in high school, I did a lot better. Yeah, I did do a lot better. I think, I was never good at math or science. I was never good at that kind of thing. But I could do well in like history and English and all that. I was good at that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you're a smart guy. Like, I mean, it just seems like, I mean, I had that problem too, where it was a lot of times the trouble I got into was just the kids I was hanging out with, and I would just kind of, I was always trying to impress like the worst people, and
yeah. I think, it was interesting. Like I loved my friends in middle school. They were very cool kids, and they all skateboarded and stuff, which I didn't even do. So I tried to learn. I was terrible at it, but I was kind of the comic relief, I think.
Sure.
And I thought they were really cool, and they didn't go to school. They cut class and the whole thing. And, I guess they got in trouble too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think their parents were a lot looser on them.
Right.
So my parents were not loose in that way.
That was the thing for me too, was like, I would do basically the same thing that all my friends were doing, but they just didn't have any consequences. Like that, like I would always get in so much, I get grounded and stuff, and I don't even know if their parents like, hey, and then that's probably why they were bad kids. You know what I mean?
I think it's the same with me. I think a lot of my friends, they had pretty absent parents. I think a lot of them were divorced and single moms who were kind of just like, honestly, kind of out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was jealous.
Did you see that Jonah Hill movie, the mid-90s? Have you seen that yet?
Oh, no. I hear it's good, though.
It was pretty good. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, I don't know, I guess maybe it's because I grew up out in the sticks, but it didn't like resonate with me like it was resonating with a lot of other people. But I feel like, I mean, everything you're describing to me right now just sounds like that movie. I'm like, oh man, maybe that's what.
Did that take place in LA?
Yeah. And like Southern California, and just a bunch of like rowdy burnout skater kids in the early 90s.
Oh yeah, I know. We used to go to this like record store called Green Hell. And they loved it, and I didn't really actually like it, but I just did it because I thought I had to do it. You know?
Right.
And yeah, interesting time for me in that way because I was really just friends with these people and wanted their approval.
Yeah.
Did, yeah.
I mean, you feel like part of that was maybe being like an only child, like, you know, just like, yeah.
I think it was that. I think I also thought they were fun. They were cool and they were fun, and the alternative was pretty boring.
Right, because I feel like a lot of like childhood is just trying not to be lonely. Like you just don't want to be lonely, you know.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, and probably you're right. Probably part of it was that. I also really liked being alone though, but I do think that there was a time where it was like too much, you know, because I did have a lot of alone time.
Right,
and you know, coming home from school, my parents were still working and I kind of had all the time in the world to do whatever I wanted. I mean,
I feel like, and I say this as a father to an only child now, but like I feel like only children always had like the biggest imaginations because you guys are kind of like left to your own devices all the time, you know.
I think we just had the time, yeah,
right. Just kind of like staring at the ceiling.
I certainly get that from people. People tell me it's kind of obvious, and I think it's obvious in certain ways, like the way I eat.
Oh, really?
Because I eat slowly. And some people always say, "Oh, you must have not had brothers and sisters," because like, you know, you gotta grab what you can get, and just eat it. And I would eat slowly, like really slowly.
Yeah.
So, you know, like almost like pontificating with like a drumstick in my hand. You know, just like, oh, see, this is the issue with this one. Yeah, exactly.
It's all over the wall.
I was in no rush to eat.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
What are you into growing up? I mean, are you reading comic books or are you watching? Well, you know.
I loved sports. I loved baseball, football. I liked all the big sports. I like basketball. I liked them all.
Yeah.
And I would recreate the sports outside. I'd get the newspaper and I would read the box score of the baseball game and like pretend to be all the players. It was like, in fact, I would do it on the front lawn so everyone in the neighborhood knew me.
Okay.
As the kid who played with himself. And
I mean, when you say that, like you were acting out like scenes from the game the night before. Is that like?
I guess I didn't want to do the exact game, but I wanted the exact players.
Okay.
I was very interested in realism.
Okay.
You know, and it was just like, what would happen if I was doing it? You know, and I would just be like, up next is this guy and that guy. And I wasn't like trying to recreate that he got a single at that time or whatever. But, you know, I tried all sorts of variations where I was the pitcher or I was the hitter. You know what I mean?
How funny,
and,
man.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. So you'd be Randy Johnson pitching to Mark McGwire and like
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I would. I'd pick any game. I loved it. I loved the box score. It told you everything about the game. I never got a great system going because, of course, I was only one kid.
Yeah, right.
So it was tough. You know, I was like, well, if I hit the ball here, it's a single. You know what I mean? It was just like a lot of work.
Yeah. Now, did you actually have like a stick and ball, or was it all just?
I had a wiffle bat and a little like plastic ball that really couldn't hit break anything. So that was great. I had a glove. You know, I could field and stuff. I mean, I did play baseball myself with a team for like a couple years.
Did any of that like translate to like actual baseball? You know what I mean? Like, were you basically like coaching yourself in a weird way?
Yeah, I mean, I loved baseball and I loved playing, but it was so much harder with other people. You know, because the ball was. I mean, it
could go anywhere.
It could go anywhere, and it was farther to throw it. You had to. Yeah, it was like. I remember I started at shortstop and the throw was just too far. So I played second base. And my dad was actually the coach for our team. Yeah, and he was like strangely like really tough on all of us. He wasn't a tough guy in general, but man, when he was the baseball coach, like he was mad at us. So, we were a pretty bad team.
Were you?
Yeah, but I loved baseball, but it was very hard to play on a team. I was a little guy, and I didn't have the arm strength really. I couldn't hit the ball far. I could hit it on the ground, but I couldn't hit very well.
Right.
You know, I could field really well. Actually, I could field the ball, but then I'd have to throw it. I could throw it well too, but
Yeah.
You know, I was always kind of a stressed out kid. So
Sure,
it was like the ball was hard, and you had a lot of equipment. Like they made you wear the cup and everything.
Right,
and I remember
right.
just not even realizing that that's what a baseball player would wear. You know? And that kind of turned me off of baseball, honestly. That they needed that. You know?
Yeah. Did you play any others? You mentioned football. Did you go in on that at all? Or?
I did. Well, I played in a flag football league as a kid, and I got injured playing that.
Did you really?
Yeah, I really couldn't play football. It was too aggressive, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, I someone threw the ball at me, and I wasn't ready, and it bent my arm back, and I sprained my wrist. I mean, it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't catch, so they actually, even in flag football, they had blockers. So they made me a left tackle, and I was just like, this guy was just crushing me every time. You know? And it was brutal. I was like, this is flag football.
Yeah,
I'm getting hurt.
One. Yeah.
So no, I really never played any football. Other than that.
Sure.
Yeah.
At what point does the comedy come in for you? Are you were you like a big comedy nerd growing up, or?
Not really. I always liked certain things. I loved The Simpsons, and I really loved the Seinfeld show. I really loved the Seinfeld show.
Yeah.
And Conan. I liked those shows.
Yeah.
But I never really thought I'd do stand-up until later on. I wanted to be a fiction writer. I liked writing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I went to school for that. And I actually knew some people who did stand-up in New York. I was in school in New York, and it seemed really cool.
Yeah.
And I was always a funny person.
Right.
But I never thought I'd do it until, later on in my life. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's it was interesting just how, you think about the first few times you do stand-up, and it was like, I really had no idea what it took.
Yeah.
To be a comedian.
What and did you start comedy in LA also?
Mm-hmm.
You did?
Yeah.
What was your first open mic like? Where you?
I went to the Ha Ha Cafe.
Oh wow. Okay.
Which is in North Hollywood.
Yeah. I know where.
You pay like $5 to get 5 minutes, and I just didn't know what was going on. I talked about Skittles or something. I thought I would just be naturally funny.
Sure. Yeah.
Which was so interesting because that's not how it is at all.
Right. It's not. It's never exactly what you think it is. I mean that
there's just so much more writing involved than I think I realized. But I realized that pretty quickly.
And I think it's like the expectations too. It's like when you're funny in conversation and people are like, "Oh, you're so funny. Like you should be a comedian." It's like, "Well, I made you laugh because you weren't expecting to laugh." But suddenly the expectation is there, and it's like, "Okay, motherfucker, like stand and deliver."
It's a big difference, and it's like you have to get almost everyone.
Yeah.
Whereas one person can think you're funny because you just have a good rapport with them,
right.
And it's true. I always thought that, like, if I had a good rapport with one person, I thought, oh, I'm just funny. But it was just one person, So
right.
yeah.
Turns out there's a lot of those.
There's a lot of other people who wouldn't think anything you were saying is funny. So
yeah.
And I think it's true of like my life in general. I know some really funny people that I don't think could do stand up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Some of the funniest people I know aren't even comedians.
Yeah, exactly. They're just really funny in regular life, but it's a different thing. Yeah, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah. That's wild. So yeah, you go up with the ha and it goes well enough for you to like, get the bug.
I guess so. It didn't go well, but I just I guess I kept going, and I do like it. I really liked it. I did really like comedy. I like old school comedy. Like I liked the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Even before I was really able to watch it. I just liked that style.
Yeah.
Like just standing there, not moving, but being really funny.
Yeah.
I thought that was so great.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because that comes through. Like you're a really good joke writer. Like from a technical standpoint, like your material's solid. It's not overly embellished. You don't use a lot of crutches that a lot of other comedians use as far as just trying to be this big huge personality on stage. You're kind of this like ninja. Like you kind of like almost like a sniper. You're like you're sitting there.
Ninja, yeah.
And it's so funny and so well written, and it's very I mean, I've heard people describe you as in sort of like a Seinfeld-esque sort of way. I mean, like you have that delivery. It's almost kind of a cool like throwback style of comedy that you do, and it's so refreshing now. I mean, because I think that was like that 90s style of delivery. I think it was like people just kind of like forgot about it, and I think is more what it was. And then you kind of come through with like a modern reimagining of it, and it's so I love it, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is funny. People will say that, and I like that. I like that they say that. It's funny, like other comedians will joke with me, and like they're like, we got to get you the big blazer from the 90s, and deck you out in the whole outfit.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it, though. I appreciate it. I think for me, I really loved, like, stand-up wise, like the sort of 5 to 7 minutes on TV where like the person wasn't moving at all and they were just so sharp. I thought that was so cool. It's different when you're doing a long set or when you're in a club and you see so many people do so well in a different way. And it's all valuable.
Right.
But I also think for me personally, I don't think I would ever have been a very high energy, like moving around a lot. Honestly, I can't really move around a lot anyway. I'm not particularly mobile. So, but yeah, that's what I was trying to do. At a certain point I realized like that was kind of my thing. And I did love the Seinfeld show and I liked Seinfeld stand up a lot. So I definitely, maybe not intentionally, but sort of just happened to get that kind of style going.
Right. Yeah, it's great. And you've leaned into it nicely. And everybody, every time your name has come up, it's always been in like the highest regard. Like nobody,
nice.
There's not a lot of people, and plus you're a really nice guy, which helps too. But that's great, man. And what did your folks think of the whole stand up thing? Were they?
They're actually very supportive of me. Yeah, they do support me a lot. My mom is very supportive and very interested.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? When can I see you? La, la, la. And that's very nice.
Yeah.
She doesn't really ever get to see me because it's just not.
It's always hard performing for your folks, man.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Even though I want her to, but it's also like she'll think it'll be a good time, but it won't. It won't be fun.
Because they're gonna be so worried for you. They're gonna be nervous for you.
Yeah. And my dad is very supportive too. He's less interested. But that's just his personality in general. I think he's just like, he's more like, hey, as long as he's being fed and he has some money, like he's good. You know what I mean? So
do you still? What's your day job? What do you do?
I work for an art conservator, so we like restore artworks.
That's cool.
Yeah. I've worked there for a long time, so that is my day job, and it's a pretty good job, especially for what I do outside of work. It's like I'm done early.
Yeah.
And it doesn't conflict with stand up at all. It's a little bit more intensive than what a lot of other people do, but I've kind of got it down now. So.
Right. Do you is that what you went to school for?
No, I just got it through a family thing, like I just know people. My mom is in art as well.
Gotcha.
And so and I've been doing it for a long time now. Yeah. So
cool.
It's not bad at all. It's actually a pretty good job. Yeah,
that's great. And you're able to come to Fresno for 4 days.
Exactly. Yeah. I can do this. So
right.
As long as it doesn't conflict with when I have to go out of town and all that, and it's all pretty flexible. So it's great.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, you're Ben Brandfon, and this is a podcast called Sad Dad, and it's where we talk about dads. And you've mentioned him a couple times now. You have a dad.
I do have a dad. Absolutely.
Yeah. And where'd your dad grow up?
My dad grew up in Queens, New York.
No kidding. Huh?
And it was hard to actually get him to tell me where he grew up.
Really?
Because I feel like, this is the thing about my dad. He's a little slippery in some ways. Like, it's like he doesn't give you the whole story. So he grew up in Queens, but sometimes he would say it was Brooklyn.
Okay.
But it was, I think from what I know now, he was born in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And his family lived in Brooklyn for many years before he was born.
Okay.
And then a couple years after he was born, they moved to Queens. Jamaica, Queens, which is like just a neighborhood in Queens. In fact, where he went to the same high school Donald Trump went to.
Wow.
Trump got kicked out of the high school.
How funny.
Or maybe it was a middle school or elementary school, something like that. Trump got kicked out, though, for just being a bad kid. Yeah. And it was weird, apparently, because, like, the school was mostly Jewish kids. And Trump.
Funny.
But there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
What was that sort of like a weird like? Is it was he embarrassed to like admit that he grew up in Queens? Like, is it like a weird tribal thing? Like
I think it's just that he doesn't give you the full story. He's not embarrassed at all.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? It's just like you'll just hear something one day and you're like, well, wait a minute. I think it's more my curiosity. Is more. I have more curiosity than him, and he has interest in telling me anything. You know what I mean? So I want to know.
Yeah.
And so one time he was just like, yeah, when we lived in Flatbush, which is Brooklyn, I was like, well, you said you grew up in Queens. He's like, well, at the beginning we lived in Brooklyn. So, and I know they were big like Brooklyn Dodger fans and stuff like that. So it definitely was. They were very close to Brooklyn, and I think maybe his parents lived there for a long time before he was born. He was also an only child.
Oh, was he really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What kind of kid was he? Was he? I mean, I don't know. Like, did his experience as an only child mirror yours at all? I mean,
I think we were probably very similar, actually. I think his parents. I never met them because they died pretty young, but they were a lot like my parents. They were very supportive and good parents, and he was very, a nurtured kid. He liked sports. He was pretty quiet, I think. He hasn't told me a whole lot about his childhood, but, growing up in Queens and, like, going to school and, like, just having friends and stuff like that. He loved baseball and went to summer camp, like, when he was a teenager and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think he was pretty similar, I think, honestly. Yeah.
And so he's grown up out there. Was he a good student? Was he
very good student? Yeah, my dad was a very good student, and really everyone on his side of the family were very, very good students. Yeah, I mean, we have a small family on his side, very small. But my dad is a very like scholastically, inclined person.
Sure.
He went to school for many years, and I know he didn't have any brothers and sisters, but his mom's sister, his aunt, had one kid too, and she was like, she went to MIT, and she was like a linguist, and then they're very like heavy into studying. Yeah, they were very into that.
Yeah. And so like he's growing up, he's doing that. He's a good student, graduates high school, and then does he go to college immediately, or does he take?
Yeah, he went to college immediately after high school. Yeah, he went to Wesleyan, which is in Connecticut, I think.
Okay.
And this was like the late 60s.
Oh, wow.
So he was there, and he doesn't talk to me a whole lot about Wesleyan. Back then, it was an all-boys school, so he would talk about going to there was some girls' school right by there, and he would always go there, and he has some sign from the girls' school he thinks is so cool.
Oh, how funny!
He stole the sign.
Yeah, and a drawer full of their panties.
Yeah, not
like,
that.
Dad,
no, he forgot that.
Probably,
he just got the sign. You know what I mean? But and he still has. I don't know anymore, but his best friends were from Wesleyan at that time.
Yeah.
And
I'm just kind of doing the math on it. Like when you were saying he was in college, your dad sounds like he's almost just about my dad's age, because my dad was born in 50, so he's gonna be 70 next year.
I think my dad just turned 70 last year, but he was 70. His birthday is in December. He was born in 48.
Oh, got it.
December 1948.
He's my mom's age. My mom was born in 48.
Yeah, so he's 70 this year.
So they had you a little later in life.
Yeah, my dad is older than my mom by about 8 years. But yeah, and also my dad's parents had him when they were older.
Oh, really?
My dad's parents had my dad when they were almost 40. So and I never met them, but my grandparents are like born around 1910.
Whoa.
Which is kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
we took our time.
We're not in
the
any
Brandfons,
rush.
are not in any rush to have kids. Yeah, and when they have one, it's just one.
At what point does your mom come into the picture for your dad?
So my dad went to school.
Did he? And that's right around Vietnam too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was he able to like get out of that hole?
My dad did not go to Vietnam, and I think the story is pretty complex. Actually,
Really?
I think my dad's mom really like made sure he didn't go.
Oh wow.
Really, I don't know the whole story. I think it's a pretty tough thing for him to talk about. I think he has some guilt. Honestly.
Like kind of like being.
He was a kid essentially. He was 17 or something
Sure.
when he would have been drafted.
Yeah.
But I think my dad's mom was very sick at the time. She died about that same time, about the time when he was 18.
Yeah.
And I think basically she did everything she could to keep her only son from going to Vietnam.
She's like, look, I'm sick. He's the only one around to take care of me. And yeah, wow, good for her though. I mean, that's yeah.
I think that she was like, they're not going to take my son to Vietnam. My grandparents were very socially conscious people from way back. From way back.
Back before it was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were like, they were members of the Communist Party in the 30s.
Wow.
And apparently it was because of two things. There was like, the Communist Party in the United States was the only party that was against the fascists in Spain during the Civil War at the time, which was sort of like the precursor to the fascists in Italy and Nazism and all that.
Right.
My grandparents saw that and were like, we're not going to support that.
Yeah.
And apparently the Communist Party was the only party against Jim Crow laws and segregation, and they were very much against that.
Wow. Yeah.
So
nobody ever talks about that part of the Red Scare.
Yeah. And I think that they really, got scared after World War II. They were both in World War II. My grandmother was a nurse, I think, and my grandfather, actually, I think he was also like a medic or something in the Pacific. And they were really scared afterward that they were going to lose their jobs and all that because of their previous affiliation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So they were like so I can imagine in the 60s they were not really in support of the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think it was because they supported the communists in Vietnam. It's just that they just didn't see it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, didn't see it as necessary.
It was it's a very unnecessary. Yeah. So I mean, but and at the same time too, I can kind of see where your dad might have some like. I mean, I could think of it as almost like survivor's guilt, like where like he didn't get sent. Was that kind of what he was wrestling with?
I think so. I think it's something we don't really talk about a lot, but I do feel that way. I think he feels like he probably, if it wasn't for her help, he would have gone. And who knows what would have happened to him?
For sure.
Who knows what would have happened to him?
Yeah,
he was not ready for a war, I don't think.
For sure. Yeah. And then you started, I like totally interrupted you with that whole tangent, but you were starting to talk about how your dad met your mom?
Yeah, so my dad met my mom a little bit later. My dad went to school at Wesleyan, and then he went to graduate school. My dad became an archaeologist.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, but apparently this is what he tells me. In the United States, you actually can't become an archaeologist. What you do is you study what you want to become an archaeologist about, and then because basically the United States considers archaeology just digging, so like we're not going to give you a degree in digging. So he became he studied like Middle Eastern, really like ancient Israel, and like the history of the time of ancient Israel, specifically the time when the Bible was supposedly being written. He kind of wanted to discover like what that time actually was like.
Oh, interesting.
Like take the Bible as a book. Like any book, does it actually accurately represent the time? So that's what he studied, and he eventually started working in Israel, excavating, and my mom was going to work with him on taking the pottery out and like studying the pottery. My mom was involved in art and restoration as well, and so she was going to be like the conservation expert on the dig. And I remember the funny story. They were deciding, like, she was deciding whether she wanted to go to Israel or to like Greece or something, and my dad made up a bunch of stories about Greece that it was horrible. It's like, you gotta go there if you like bugs, and stuff like that. And so she went. And they met there. And after a couple of years, they
met
married.
in Israel.
They met in Israel.
Wow.
Yeah, they did meet. They met on the excavation. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's. I mean, that's cool. I mean, they make it. That makes it sound like so romantic. Because because I've dated a couple of archaeologists, and they're just like, it's so boring.
Yeah, well, I think it is in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I think it is. Who knows? I mean, he definitely. There's definitely, I think, a lot of boring parts.
Sure.
From what he has told me, but he's told me some incredible stories about the digs. That are, like, really incredible. So
Yeah.
So I think at that time, maybe, you know, and he was into it. He was really and it was like this was really the only thing he was interested in archaeologically. You know, it wasn't like he wanted to go somewhere else and dig up something else.
Yeah, in fairness to archaeologists, the archaeologists that had told me that it was so boring, I mean, they're not like working on like stuff like that. They're usually like at construction sites and like making sure, you know, that there aren't any artifacts dug up before they put in this track house.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean that's fascinating though. Did he grow up like religious? I mean, is that what the draw was to?
You know,
to
I
Israel
don't
and
think
the
they
Bible?
were that religious at all. I think there was a Jewish culture in New York at that time. I think you see it with a lot of people of my dad's age, actually, that aren't particularly religious, but it's like a secular Jewish culture. And truthfully, he wasn't really religious. He actually wanted to kind of show the truth about the time. You know, he wasn't like, he didn't think that the stories were true.
Right.
He just thought, well, what is the are the description of the buildings and the cities true?
I see. Yeah.
And he thought he could learn more about that actual time because he knew that time was real. He knew that things were happening, and he wanted to piece together the history of the Bible, how it came together as a book, because it's a book, you know, and it's actually a really fascinating book.
Right. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then so they meet, they fall in love. Like, how soon do they get married? Is it a pretty quick thing? Or?
I think it was pretty quick. I don't know the exact time. A couple years, I think. My mom's parents did not like him at all.
Oh, really?
They thought he was dirty.
Dirty?
Because he was on a dig all the time. And he had dirty shoes.
Yeah,
and
sure.
stuff,
I mean,
yeah.
in fairness, objectively, he might have been dirty.
I think objectively they were totally spot on that. Yeah, and my mom's parents lived in Miami, and so they'd go and visit. And yeah, you know, you know, they got married. Yeah, and I think probably a couple years after they had started going out and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so what do they? So like obviously there's a big gap between like when they get married and when you come along, right? I mean,
well, the gap is more between when my dad ends college and when they meet, because my dad was actually married before my mom.
Oh, interesting.
At a previous marriage.
Oh,
yeah.
I got you. Yeah.
So yeah, like my dad probably, I don't know the exact timeline because I think he was in school to get his PhD for a long time. But, you know, he must have graduated at Wesleyan like in the early 70s and then spent 3 or 4 or 5 years at the University of Pennsylvania getting his doctorate.
Wow. Yeah.
And then that's probably when he was married first. I really don't know a whole lot about his first marriage.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they met probably in the late 70s or early 80s.
Wow.
And then I was born in the mid 80s. So you know, it wasn't a huge gap between when they met and when I was born, but definitely a huge gap between Fred, my dad's beginnings as a you know, an archaeologist, and when they met.
Yeah, I got you. And then you were saying he taught at USC for a while?
My dad taught at USC for, I think, only a semester. He got like sort of a fellowship, and the story was really funny, actually, because so he went out to meet like the head of the department or something here in LA, and we were either in Philadelphia or South Carolina at the time, and apparently like you know, if he heard this he'd probably correct me a million times, but there was like all the candidates had dinner together, and the dean or the head of the department was pretty loose, and I guess he was drinking or something, and he just said to one of them, he's like, hey, do you know Arabic or something? And one of the not the contestants, one of the you know, applicants was like, yeah, I know. And he's like, well, say something in Arabic for me, you know, speak to this other guy in Arabic or something. And he starts speaking, and, you know, was doing this whole thing, and they were conversing, and the head of the department said to my dad, he's like, do you know what the hell he just said? And my dad just said something like, this guy just told him to go fuck himself, you know, something like just a complete joke, you know. And the guy loved it, and he got the job. You know, so
So
and I'm sure the other applicants are just like, come on, this is a serious position.
Yeah, they're speaking Arabic over there. Trying to impress this
and I don't
D.
even know. It could have been something even more, like way more less common than Arabic. It was probably like Babylonian or something like that. You know, something
some
that's just
dead
like
language.
Yeah. And you know, and Fred didn't know it. I don't think. He wasn't as smart, you know. But you know, this is the story from him.
That's so funny.
Know,
he said it was on. Was that what took you guys out to LA? Was that USC thing?
Well, actually, so yeah, we came out here, but we only were gonna stay for the one semester.
Yeah.
And then my mom really didn't want to live in South Carolina anymore. My mom was a big city person. She had gone to school in New York. She'd grown up in Miami.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to live in Charleston. I mean, she didn't hate it. It's a beautiful place.
Sure.
She wanted to be in a big city. And my dad had really kicked around a lot as a professor. He had been in Charleston. He'd taught in like colleges in New Jersey. He went to Central Michigan and taught there. Like he was really, and his specialties were pretty, you know, they were very, very specific, and it was hard for him to get courses where people would attend, honestly.
I see.
So he did eventually stop being a full-time professor, and he went to law school.
Oh, interesting.
This was like, he was like 40 years old. He went to law school, and he applied to all these big law schools.
Yeah.
And he got into UCLA. So he just like, my mom was like, let's go to LA. So that's why we eventually moved to LA.
What's the law school angle on the archaeology thing?
He basically gave that up. I mean, as an archaeologist, I mean, he still works as an archaeologist, and he writes, you know, articles, and he's published and all that. But he just realized, as you know, I was a little kid, and he needed to support his family, you know. So and his father was a lawyer.
Oh, interesting.
So my grandfather was a lawyer, and of course my grandfather apparently told my dad, just don't ever be a lawyer. Like, don't ever be a lawyer. And he became a lawyer.
Yeah.
And, you know, he did go back to school late. You know, I give him a lot of credit for that. It's not easy. I mean, he was in school with all these 22-year-olds, I'm sure. And it was probably pretty
so funny.
intimidating.
He's like, I'm done being Indiana Jones. I think I want to be Perry Mason.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
I want to be Matlock.
I know. And it's like, I think he did have real interest in it, though.
Did he? Yeah,
not just that he wanted to make money, because honestly, he hasn't become the world's most successful lawyer. I mean, I think he's fine, but you know, you tell people your dad's a lawyer, and they're like, oh wow, but you know, you kind of got to start right at the beginning, otherwise you're just behind a lot of people.
I got you.
But he liked it, and you know, apparently being a lawyer requires just a lot of reading, and my dad just reads constantly. So, and he's into that, and he's, you know, I can't imagine he's actually a good lawyer just because of how he talks and stuff. But apparently he's really good, you know. He's really good in court and all that. Yeah, so
really can dig down.
And he can really, like, you know, be clear and concise with the judge and all that. And his writing is very clear, so I can definitely see it from that.
I'm trying to make a bad lawyer archaeologist joke, but it's just not happening for me right now.
Yeah, I know the lawyer. It is a weird thing to become a. You'd think once you're an archaeologist, that's it, but it's not. It's not. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I guess the only other thing I was going to ask you before I ask you about your dad anecdote, but what was like ultimately like your relationship like with your dad? I mean, like how did you two get along?
We get along great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad and I really get along really well.
Yeah.
I think kind of too well for my mom. I think my mom's kind of like, hey. You guys aren't friends, you know what I mean? I think she felt a little bit like, hey, I gotta be the parent all the time, and Fred can just be the fun guy.
Yeah.
But we get along great. We really have a lot of same interests and stuff. And I see my dad pretty much once a week now.
Oh, wow.
Every week.
Yeah.
We get together, and you know, my parents are divorced, but he still lives in LA, and like we really get along. You know, we laugh a lot. He's like a big inspiration to me comedically. You know, I remember like he would show me like the Marx Brothers when I was a little kid, and I didn't even understand what they were saying, but he was laughing so hard that I was like, oh, if I can do that, you know, that would be so great. So, so definitely his like sense of humor and like where he comes from, like the New York thing is a big thing for me.
Sure. Yeah, that's great, man. And this is the part where I ask you for a dad anecdote, just some memory from childhood. Did you have one in the chamber?
Yeah, I do. My dad, which I never call my dad. I always called him Fred.
Really?
Yeah, up until I was 8, I called him Dad, and then I just started calling him Fred for fun because I thought it was funny, and he didn't even care. So he didn't correct me or anything. But Fred would like. One time, I remember he wanted to do something special for my mom's birthday, and my mom wanted him to do something special. He wasn't the greatest at birthdays.
Okay.
He'd made some big mistakes. You know what I mean? So he needed to correct these mistakes. And so he came to me with this plan. He was like, I'm going to throw a surprise party for your mom. And it was going to be at her friend's house in Laurel Canyon in LA. It was like a really nice place. And I was like, okay, great. And he was like, but we got to pretend like we're going to be doing something else so that she's not just completely like thinking we screwed up and like did nothing. So he said, I'm going to hire a limo. And we're going to pick her up and you up, and we're going to make up this whole thing that we're doing something else and then go to the party. So I was like, okay, fine. I was like 7 or something. I don't even know why he was talking to me about it.
He's like, listen, he pours you a glass of scotch.
He's giving me the plans. It's like, this is your deal, man, But so we get in the limo, and my mom is really excited. It's like so not something my dad would do,
Yeah.
And she was like, what's going on? What are we doing? And he said... He made up this whole story about how they're going to Disneyland for the weekend and they're going to stay in the resort or something like that. And she was so into it. You know what I mean? And I realized he had totally screwed himself, because he had made the fake party so good, So, we got to the real party and she was disappointed. You know what I mean? So, it's sort of a classic Fred story. Just make it less interesting, you know what I mean? It's just like, she was like, oh, so no Disneyland, just a bunch of my friends in a house, But yeah,
that's really funny.
Yeah.
Oh, Ben, you've been a ton of fun today, man. If people want more Ben Brandfon in their life, where can they find you?
Oh, well, you can find me tonight and tomorrow at the Chico's.
Yeah. Well, this will come out on Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know exactly where I am next week, but just look me up on Twitter at Ben Brandfon, and I post everything there.
Sweet. I'll link your Twitter in the show notes.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much, man. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, ton of fun.
And we're back. Ben Brandfon, everybody. He's great. Follow him on Twitter when you get the chance. Ben's one of those guys. He doesn't have like a lot of pictures of himself up on the internet, and I know it's always a struggle for me whenever I have Ben up to like find like a good picture of him to like promote stuff. So Ben get some headshots, bro. I did actually put together the artwork for this episode. I really like it, actually. It turned out really well. So check that out over on my Instagram or on the Sad Dad Facebook page, which you can like and follow. And you can also, if you need to get a hold of me, go to saddadpodcast@gmail.com. There's a Sad Dad Patreon if you want to help support the show financially. And I think that's it. Rate and review on iTunes if you can. I'll read your iTunes review on the air if you do that. And that's it, guys. We'll be back next week for 4th of July. 4th of July with a very funny comedian named Felicia Folks. So it's a great episode. I just recorded that with her yesterday, and it's a ton of fun. Felicia's a blast, man. So guys, that's it. I will catch you next week. Adios.